Hello and welcome back to the Crime Reel. I would like to thank one of my subscribers, Jordan David, for suggesting today's crime, a horrifying story of fantasy roleplay which spilt over into real life, resulting in a brutal murder. Our story today centres around the Schwarz family from Virginia. Robert and Joan were married in 1974 and had 3 children together, a son named Jesse and 2 daughters, Michelle and Clara. The father, Robert, was a nationally renowned scientist, an expert in biometrics and DNA research, and one of the founding members of the Virginia Biotechnology Association. Little is known about the family's early years, but in January 1997, Joan died after a long battle with cancer. At this time, her children were aged 21, 18 and 16. Obviously, this was a difficult time for the entire family, but Clara in particular had trouble coping, and as a result, her relationship with her father deteriorated. She had trouble fitting in, not just at school, but even at home. Many of her classmates found her odd because she would often talk of death, ending her life, and thoughts about self-harming. Family members said that she was suffering from bipolar disorder, and her diary detailed extensive anger towards her father, which escalated over a number of years, with entries in her diary such as, "I feel the utmost hatred for him," and "I hope he rots in hell, if it exists, and I hope he suffers and understands how psychotic his actions on earth have become." It was very clear the depth of problems in their relationship. By 2001, Clara was attending James Madison University. Around this time, she met 18-year-old Kyle Holbert at the Maryland Renaissance Festival, and they bonded instantly, drawn together by their fascination of witchcraft and the occult. Together with Clara's friend from high school, 20-year-old Catherine Inglis, and Catherine's boyfriend, Michael Foll, who was 21. They formed a fiercely loyal friendship group. As Clara would later say, "We're social within the antisocial." The group bonded over their shared obsessions with fantasy and the supernatural, dragons, vampires and witchcraft. Clara had created a role-playing game that she called Underworld, which she controlled in her role as Lord Chaos, and referred to herself as a pagan priestess of high chaos. The others also became part of the fantasy role-playing game, with Kyle wanting to be a vampire and a ninja warrior. Clara told Kyle that her father was physically and emotionally abusing her, that he was poisoning her food, specifically that he had poisoned pork chops which he had cooked for her and laced lemons with sulfuric acid. She claimed that Robert would hit her and pull her hair. Kyle believed that he needed to protect Clara. On the 8th of December 2001, Kyle, Michael and Catherine had been shopping before driving to Robert's remote farmhouse in Leesburg, Virginia, arriving at approximately 5:15 p.m. Catherine and Michael knew that Kyle said he had a job to do, and that Kyle's definition of job is assassination. Michael and Catherine waited in the car whilst Kyle knocked at the door. Robert answered and let Kyle inside the house. 2 days later, on the 10th of December 2001, Robert's body was discovered. He had been stabbed over 30 times with a 2-foot-long sword and had an X carved into the back of his neck. The authorities were saying that the murder had occult overtones. As the investigation got underway, the police soon identified that Michael had called for assistance from a tow truck near Robert's house at around the time of the murder. Michael, together with Catherine, were brought in for questioning. They soon confessed to their involvement. On the 11th of December, Catherine made a 10-page statement to the police implicating Clara in the murder of her father. Catherine stated that Clara had previously had a conversation with herself, Michael and Kyle about wanting her father killed, and went on to repeat, Clara's claims of physical and emotional abuse. It should be noted that Robert's father said that he did not believe that his son had been abusing Clara. Police found multiple conversations between Clara and Kyle online, saved in a folder labelled UW People, standing for Underworld People. Authorities believe that it was in these conversations that Clara encouraged Kyle to commit the murder using the word Tay, Tango Alpha Yankee, as code word for murder. At one point, she said that if Kyle were to kill her father, all I ask is that it not trace back to me. Clara, Kyle, Catherine and Michael were all arrested and indicted for Robert's murder. Kyle confessed to killing Robert, stating that he did it in order to protect Clara from Robert's alleged abuse. I have always told Clara that I would protect her. I thought about killing him when the visions got out of control. I could no longer sleep without seeing him doing something to Clara. Clara's case was the first of the 4 to be tried. In October 2002, the jurors were tasked with deciding whether Robert was killed in a plot which had been orchestrated by his youngest daughter, or if it was Kyle who had mistaken his friend's role-playing comments as an order to kill. The prosecution put forward a case describing a manipulative young woman who used her role-playing game to convince her friends, particularly Kyle, whose mental state was vulnerable, to kill her father. The prosecutor stated that, make no mistake, she called the shots. She was overlord of the underworld. The defence, however, stated that due to Kyle's mental illness, he had misinterpreted the conversations with Clara that were made during the course of the game. They also argued that it was a legal impossibility to enter into a conspiracy with a person who may be legally insane. When witnesses were called, Kyle refused to testify against Clara, citing his right to avoid self-incrimination. Whilst his earlier confession clearly pointed to Clara orchestrating the crime, much credibility was lost due to his talk of voices that he heard from underworld characters, Saba and Order. Catherine testified for the prosecution and stated that Clara would often talk about wanting her father dead and how much money she stood to inherit if that happened. The prosecution brought in a witness by the name of Patrick House, another friend of Clara, who claimed that she had tried to recruit him to murder her father. Patrick said that he had become Path, the assassin, and Rowan the Bard in Clara's underworld game that included a character, Old Guy, known as OG, who represented Clara's father. Clara began asking Patrick as the assassin to kill the Old Guy. Patrick initially took this only to be in the context of the game. However, as time passed, it became clear that Clara wanted him to kill her father in real life, as she dropped the references to OG and spoke specifically of her father instead, with Patrick saying she no longer appeared to be inside the game, she appeared to be back in reality again. In September 2001, Clara, Patrick, Michael and Catherine had visited a Ruby Tuesdays restaurant where Clara ordered a rare steak. She sent the steak back 3 times, noting on the 3rd time that she believed her father had poisoned it and wondered how he had been able to contact the chef. Clara asked Patrick openly when he planned to kill her father and was becoming increasingly frustrated that he was not carrying out her wishes. And whilst this was damning testimony, on cross-examination, Patrick admitted that he believed in fire-breathing dragons, magical spells, and the notion that if he believes something with my entire being, it becomes real. The defence claimed that Kyle had taken Clara's directions to kill her father out of the context of their role-playing game, adding that Clara never intended for any person to kill her father. They painted a portrait of a troubled young woman immersed in a fantasy world who accidentally stumbled upon a friend who took her literally, with her defence attorney, James Connell, stating that the dark, almost silly dark, world of CLARA SCHWARTZ collided with the sinister dark world of Kyle Holbert. Clara never intended for any person to kill her father. Clara's uncle, Christopher Schwarz, one of the few family members who supported Clara during the trial, testified that his niece had been troubled for years. He said a hyperthyroid condition caused her to be confused and paranoid, adding that she was a good person, but she had these demons. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before finding Clara guilty of first-degree murder. She faced her brother and sister in court, as both said that no sentence, no matter how severe, could bring justice. 22-year-old Michelle told the judge that she was haunted by nightmares of her father's last moments. It's hard enough it was my father, but on top of that, to have my sister committing such a horrible crime. Her brother, Jesse, 25, said that he thought of his father's death and his sister's role in it every day. When Clara was asked if she had anything to say, she simply replied, "Nothing that hasn't already been said." The following February, she was sentenced to 48 years in prison. Clara has made many unsuccessful attempts to appeal her conviction and is currently incarcerated at the Fluvanna Correctional Center for Women in Virginia, where she has a tentative release date of November 2nd, 2043. Kyle was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He apologised to the family and said that he thought that what he was doing was right when he committed the murder, stating that "There is nothing I wouldn't give to take that act back. I allowed myself to be poisoned by Clara." His attorney, William Fitzpatrick, added that she was the puppet master, Kyle Holbert was the puppet. Michael pled guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 18 years in prison, whereas Catherine received a 1-year sentence for conspiracy to commit murder. That concludes today's case. Please click like. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and please comment down below. Okay, and now it's time for Petty Crime. This is Tabocat. He originally appeared in 2020, and this year he's now turned 18. A true lover of true crime, he sits and listens most days when his owner, Orlando, is playing his usual true crime. If you're wondering about the cartoon sketch, this is from a local artist that drew Tabo wearing his favourite jewellery. Sandy and Andrew from Malta have sent in their 2 strays that they have adopted, Meat, Nutley and also Sweep. It's hilarious that these guys managed to fit into the nativity scene, as in their owner's words, wanted a room at the inn at Christmas. Thanks to the first petty crimes ever from Malta, and hi to their other pets, a cat called Mira and a rescue dog called Naja. More petty crime next week. Thank you for listening to the Crime Reel. Stay safe. Goodbye. Psst. This case has appeared in a few TV shows, including Snapped, Investigation Discovery, and Deadly Women. There's also a book by M. William Phelps called I'd Kill for You. Goodbye.